So I'm Guekguezian, and my project was called Food for Thought, and basically I looked at how an immigrant can conveniently maintain their cultural identity after they come to America in a way that won't really hinder their adjustment into American society. So since I gave you food first, I'm going to start with the project portion of my capstone. So I made a cookbook. There's 3 copies around the room. It's called Food for Thought, Cuisine and Stories from Around the World. So my cookbook features 14 recipes, 14 stories from 10 countries around the world. So the thing you just ate and hopefully enjoyed is called Bertolli de Patata, and it's a recipe from the southern part of Italy where tradition and history are part of the air you breathe. So this recipe was kindly given to me by Maria Procopio, who works in the language office. She's an Italian teacher. So just a little background on this recipe. It's a celebratory dish, and when she was 12, she wanted to make it for her mom to surprise her. That day, there was a funeral going on in town of a distant relative who had passed away, and when the procession was going by her house, they smelled the aroma, it's strong as you can see, and thought that her family was celebrating the death of this relative. Her mom was very angry and punished her. And so she still remembers that today, and she still asks her family to make these patate for her on her birthday. So you can see the format of the cookbook. It starts with a paragraph. It's kind of compiled of the interview I did, and then the recipe and the ingredients. So this is similar format. Paulina Romero is a senior at North. And her favorite dish was Mexican fried dough, and besides, she said, being absolutely delicious, which I thought it was the first thing she learned to cook. And she has only eaten them once since she came to America, but thinking about them brings back nostalgia from when she used to live in Mexico. So here's a picture. I did all the photography for my cookbook. Some things look better than others. I thought this looked pretty good. So avolimono soup is a Greek dish. Peter Vasiliadis is a dad of my friend. So the people I interviewed came from all different age groups, countries, economic classes when they were growing up. And he said that Greek food has definitely helped him maintain his identity in America because Greek food is usually found in an ethnic and authentic environment. And when he eats food that's homemade, he remembers his life before he came to America. So here's a picture of the soup. So the process. I went over it briefly, but I conducted around 22 interviews. Not all of them made it into the cookbook. I didn't think all of them were as long as I wanted, but the interviews consisted of 7 questions, and these questions had to do with their childhood, their ethnic background, memories involving food, what they ate on a daily basis. I asked for a recipe that was significant to them, and I would ask them to tell me why, and that recipe hopefully ended up in the cookbook. So after I compiled these into paragraphs, I actually made the recipes, which was somewhat difficult. I'm not a great cook, but that's kind of the point of this. The point wasn't to feature the food wasn't the important part. I thought the stories were the more important part of the cookbook. So then I did the photography, and then I used blurb.com to create the final 3 products. So there's 3 different versions of the cookbook. So the smaller one is for sale for $11 if you are interested in purchasing it after this, and 3 of those dollars goes to Heifer International, which is an organization that works to fight hunger and poverty, because not everyone can eat as much as I did during this process. So a study on cookbooks. So Guekguezian is an author who did a study on 1,000 cookbooks that were published from 1850 to 1990, and she discovered that American cookbook authors often detach culinary knowledge from their owners in order to make it more convenient for Americans. So this is good if you don't really care about where the recipe came from and don't care about authenticity. They often did not give their participants credit and thought of immigrants as unreliable sources, and often many texts were a marriage of 2 cultures rather than focusing on the original culture. So she says, the story of ethnicity in cookbooks starts with the exclusion of immigrants from the culinary space, moves to the modification of foreign culinary knowledge in accordance with American needs, to appropriating it in order to make America appear to be a multicultural society. So with my cookbook, I tried to make it as authentic as possible, even if this meant going to specific ethnic grocery stores to get a certain ingredient. And this wasn't easy. I don't expect everyone to be able to have all the ingredients that are in my cookbook, but I wanted it to be authentic, and I credited everyone who gave me recipes, and I think their stories and their backgrounds are the most important part of the book. So now I'm moving on to the paper aspect of my project, which focused on immigration, the statistics, and the psychological aspects of it. So why immigrate? So common push factors include religion, government, conflict, and the natural environment. So as you can tell by the name, a push factor is often something that forces someone to leave their country involuntarily. So for example, of a religious push factor, some Christians in Middle Eastern countries are often forced to emigrate because of bad treatment due to their religious practices. And this does not go just for Christians, but for many other religions around the world. So according to Arab news sources, the Grand Mufti of Saudi Arabia declared that it was necessary to destroy all churches in the region in March 2012. And so conflict as well can force someone out of their country. So the civil conflict revolving around a disputed presidential election in the Ivory Coast has led to civil war and has led to more than 1 million people fleeing since November 2013. So before this research, I had no idea about this conflict and no idea about the previous conflict. So I think people often fail to recognize why someone would leave their country. So many factors cannot be controlled or monitored, such as natural disasters and lack of natural resources. So the president of the Maldives recently said he might have to look elsewhere for land if his country drowns. So pull factors, as you can see by the name, is something that would pull someone to a country voluntarily. So the natural environment is also a pull factor. If someone is in search for better land to work on, they would come to a different country. Work opportunities, family. So many people immigrate to the United States because there's much more opportunity for work. So the statistics. So there has been a huge rise in immigration since the 1960s, and in the past 10 years, immigration is at an all-time high. In 1960, there were about 10 million immigrants living in the United States, and in 2011, there were 40 million immigrants. So along with this rise in immigration, there has been a huge change in trend. So back in the 1960s, most immigrants came from Europe, and now more immigrants come from a different variety of countries, which can be seen in my cookbook. I think only about 3 of them came from European countries, and it was easier to find people who didn't come from Europe. So immigrants are also now settling in a bigger area of more areas of the United States. So they no longer only settle in the Northeast and Midwest like they did in the 1960s. And the fact that immigration has risen so much in the past 50 years is kind of a reason why I chose to do this project. Immigration is very relevant today. It's often in the news. So problems faced. So immigrants face a variety of problems when they come to the United States, especially economic and social problems. So some of these social problems include a loss of cultural norms, religious customs, support systems, changes in the concept of self. They often feel isolated and often feel culturally confused. So some immigrants are forced to either assimilate or retain their cultural identity and can't really find the balance between doing both. So what even is cultural identity? So culture is defined as the behaviors and beliefs characteristic of a particular social, ethnic, or age group, and identity can be defined as the totality of one's perception of self or how we as individuals view ourselves as unique from others. So a loss of cultural identity. Before I started my project, I thought that assimilation was a good thing. I didn't know that it kind of had a negative connotation in society. And once I found the definition, which is a process by which cultural differences disappear as immigrant communities adapt to the host culture. So an immigrant's cultural identity may be lost during the assimilation process as he or she moves into the host society. So I thought this was a good thing before, because I failed to recognize that an immigrant would probably want to maintain their cultural identity. So sources of comfort or ways to maintain identity could be religion, dress, or language. But through my research, I found that these can often hinder adjustment into American society. So what is food? So the dictionary definition of food basically says it's nutrients that help stimulate growth and maintain life. So I added to that definition and said a means by which a person can maintain and illustrate their cultural identity. How? So ethnically specific food and food preparation and eating customs can emotionally transport a person to their country of origin. So an example of this is a study done by Maheshwari Naidu and Nokwanda Nuzuza. They did a study on immigrants from Sierra Leone after they moved to South Africa. And even though they weren't moving to the United States, which is what my research is on, they still showed the psychological impacts of immigration. So this participant said he recognized that a restaurant was West African just by the tablecloth, and when he touched that tablecloth, it felt like he was home, which is a huge source of comfort after your first few days in a new country. So Mridula Pradada, who is a junior here at Newton North, says that her favorite Indian dish, bel puri, reminds her of the countless hours her and her friends would spend at her school back in India. So ethnically specific food can help conveniently pass down traditions and customs through generations. So Sabine Razaki, who is a teacher at this school, is an immigrant from Pakistan and says that food is really the only way she can pass down her culture to her children because they don't visit Pakistan often because it is expensive and just really doesn't fit into their schedules. So Maria Procopio, who is also a teacher at this school, finds that food helps her kids connect more to their culture and finds that they actually want to help prepare food so they can see what their ancestors did. She said that every Sunday they eat pasta and cutlets, which not only establishes kind of a sense of stability, but really is an easy way for her kids to see what she ate when she was growing up in Italy. So food can connect people of similar backgrounds. So many communities, particularly immigrants from Slovakia, use mutual aid societies and types of celebrations to unite immigrants who come from similar backgrounds. So as you can imagine, this is really big in Italian communities, both in Italy and America, and food is a central component of the Italian festa, which is celebrations that usually revolve around saints. So at these festas, Italian communities bond through the preparation and consumption of traditional Italian foods, and it has become a characteristic event of Italian-American communities. So why did I choose this topic? I love food. I eat it all the time. I love trying new dishes from all cultures. I think immigration is very relevant today due to the recent rise in immigration, as I said before. And I think people often focus on the policies and laws that revolve around immigration, but not so much the psychological impacts, which you can imagine could be very huge on a person. And part of my family immigrated to America from the Middle East, and food is my only real connection to Armenian culture because my family lives in California. Especially because we live so close to Watertown, I find that it's very easy to go to an Armenian restaurant, and through going to that restaurant, I pick up pieces of language and decor, and I think that has been a very important part of who I am as an Armenian American, or even as a Jewish American, I guess. Eating food has really helped me connect to my culture. So that is it. Thank you.
We've done questions.
Yes.
Did you try other projects before you got to food and cookbook?
Yeah. This doesn't have to do with my project, but before this, I submitted a proposal for phototherapy, and that just seemed a little too complicated. I really wanted to kind of bring up an issue that was relevant in society today, but also do something that I loved. I love eating, I love photography, I love making things, and I thought this would be a great way to connect all three.
Frustrations?
Yeah, I emailed 40 restaurants around the Boston area that were like ethnically specific restaurants and asked them if I could possibly interview the owners or just anyone on staff who had come from another country, and no one replied. except 2 people who said, no, we won't be interested in your project. So it was very hard to find people, but Newton North is a very diverse community, and I actually got a lot of my participants from staff in the school. I posted in my Newton North class of 2014 group, and surprisingly, I didn't know this, but a lot of my classmates do come from other countries, and they were useful in my project. Also, the recipes got expensive. It was like $30 for each one, so I couldn't make all of them even though I wanted to, because I didn't have all these ingredients at my house already. I don't make all this. I don't cook really, so now I do. Yes.
So you had talked a little bit about, excuse me, the trends in immigration and the uptick in it from different places. Did you look at all at the impact that's had on cookbooks in our society or restaurants and how that's evolved in correlation with?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't research that, but from participants in my study, I used to work at this cafe in West Newton, Laroma Cafe, and the owner said that Americans' taste has definitely become more diverse, and they really do want to try out different cultures now, and she has to make more food from Sri Lanka because Americans actually want to eat that now, opposed to in the 1960s when they had no interest in eating any food from other cultures. And I see that every day with my friends who normally wouldn't eat something from another culture, now are more open to eating new foods. Yes.
So has this program and project helped you solidify maybe some of your hopes for what you're going to do at the next level? What is the next level? And then do you see like carrying this kind of program project further, or has it made you, maybe has it soured you at all on any of the things that you were thinking you might do at the next level?
Well, I definitely don't want to become a cook. I don't think I'm very good at it. But it was really, I realized that I do like cooking. I do want to study photography in college, so this kind of gave me a feel at what it would be like to present something, some of my work to an audience. I do want to major in like international relations or international development in college, and I think immigration is a big part of that, and studying other cultures is a big part of that, so not directly correlated. I don't want to make books. I don't want to cook when I'm older, but I think I could definitely continue the type of research I didn't. I learned how to do research. I never really had done anything like this before, so I definitely think I can use that at the next level. Yes.
Did it help you connect more to your own culture?
It did. I was going to interview my grandparents or my uncle, and I didn't end up doing that. I didn't really interview anyone from Armenia, but I did realize that assimilation is a problem, and that I would like to get more in touch with a side of my culture that I don't really experience too often.
And what's a good Armenian restaurant in Watertown?
There's tons. There's a bakery on Mount Auburn Street. Do you know what it's called, Mom? Yeah, Eastern Longmachine Bakery, if you're interested in that. And even Middle Eastern food in general, Jake's Falafel in Newton Center has great food. I went there yesterday, so.
Yeah. I just got one question about something that I guess I would never think of, but you did a really good job with your cookbook, is how do you go about, like, what's the process of photographing food? You know, like, was it more difficult than you expected it to be? Did you run through, like, whole, like, rolls of film just to get, like, one picture? How did that work?
Well, I found myself kind of worrying more about what the picture looked like than what the food tasted like, and I don't know if all cookbook photographers do that, but for me, that's what I did. I thought the food was okay. Some of it could have been better, but at first I didn't have a camera for a while. Mine was broken, and I used my mom's iPhone, and I was very disappointed, and so I went out of my way to, like, I went to TJ Maxx, I bought platters, I bought different color napkins, I bought everything I wouldn't normally use in my house so that these pictures would come out well. And I edited them for hours, and I think that was kind of a struggle to get the right picture, but I'm happy with all of them. Thank you.
All right.
Thank
you,
you.
Lee.
Thank you.